The night was quiet, but the stage was set. A small theater in Los Angeles had been filled with people who came not for a movie, but to hear Keanu Reeves speak. The seats were packed, lights dimmed, and whispers floated in the air. Many wondered why a Hollywood actor, famous for action films and silent humility, had chosen this place to deliver a message. People expected glamour, maybe a few stories about his career, but what came was different, something that touched deeper than the screen. As Keanu walked slowly onto the stage, he wore no designer suit. Instead, he appeared in a simple black jacket and plain jeans. There was no loud music, no dramatic introduction. He simply smiled, bowed his head slightly, and stood silently for a moment. The silence grew heavy. The audience leaned forward. It was as if everyone knew something unexpected was about to begin. "I am not here as a star," he began softly. His voice was calm, almost fragile, yet it carried weight. "I am here as a human being, just like you. Tonight, I want to share something that has carried me through pain, loss, and joy. It is one word: kindness." The word echoed. Some people smiled gently, others raised their eyebrows. Was this all? Just kindness? But Keanu did not rush. He paused again, letting the word settle in the room. He looked at the faces, ordinary people, young and old, waiting for more. "When I was young," he continued, "I thought success was about money, fame, and being recognized. But life showed me something different. I lost people I loved. I faced days where I could not even look at the mirror. There were times when silence was my only friend. In those moments, I realized what matters most is not what you own, or how many people cheer for you. What matters is how gently you treat others, and how you carry yourself when no one is watching." The crowd grew still. Keanu's eyes lowered, and for a brief second, his pain was visible. He did not hide it. Instead, he let the audience feel it with him. One woman in the front row wiped her tears quietly, but then came a twist. A man from the audience shouted suddenly, breaking the fragile calm. "Easy for you to say, Keanu. You are rich, famous. You don't know what it means to struggle like us." The words cut the silence sharply. The room tensed. All eyes turned back to Keanu, waiting to see how he would respond. Would he be offended? Would he shut the man down? Keanu's face softened. Instead of anger, a small, almost broken smile appeared. He walked closer to the edge of the stage, looking directly at the man. "You are right," he said gently. "I cannot live your life. I cannot pretend to feel every weight you carry, but struggle does not belong only to the poor or the unknown. Pain finds all of us. It found me, even when cameras were shining on my face. It found me when I was left alone at night, when people I loved were taken away suddenly. Pain does not care about fame or money. And in those dark moments, I learned that a simple act of kindness, even a stranger's smile, has the power to keep a person alive for one more day." The room was silent again, but this time the silence was heavier, richer, filled with thought. The man who had spoken lowered his head slowly, as if he had not expected such a calm and honest answer. Keanu continued, his voice steady now. "We live in a world where anger spreads faster than love. People push each other down to rise higher. But what if the real strength is in lifting others up? I'm not perfect. I fail often, but I try to remember this. Even one kind word can change someone's night. One act of respect can restore someone's dignity, and sometimes that is enough." He shared a story from years back when he was riding a subway in New York City. "No one cared who I was," he said. "I was just another passenger." A woman walked in, holding heavy bags, tired and struggling. No one stood up. I watched her hands shake. Then I stood, offered my seat, and she smiled. That smile. It was not small. It was pure relief, gratitude. It reminded me that being human is not about being known, but about being present. The audience leaned closer. It was no longer about an actor speaking. It was about a man who had seen both light and shadow and chose to believe in the quiet power of kindness. But just when the hall was deeply absorbed, another twist arrived. Outside in the street, a small group of protesters had gathered. They shouted harsh words about Hollywood, about privilege, about lies. Their voices seeped into the theater, breaking the spell inside. The audience grew restless. Some turned, their heads annoyed. The organizers rushed to the doors, unsure what to do. Keanu stopped speaking. He stood still, listening. Instead of ignoring the noise, he walked calmly off the stage and toward the entrance. The audience gasped, confused. What was he doing? He opened the door and stepped out into the night. The protesters froze. They had not expected him to face them directly. Cameras clicked, phones rose, and the street fell into silence. "I hear you," Keanu said softly, looking at the protesters. "You are angry. You believe we live in a world that is unfair. You are right. The world is unfair. But shouting hate will not heal it. It is kindness that changes it. It is respect that heals hearts. And tonight, I invite you inside. Not as protesters, not as enemies, but as people. Come sit, listen, share. Because if we cannot meet in kindness, then what hope do we have?" The protesters looked at each other. Some lowered their banners. The air shifted. One young man stepped forward nervously, then another. Slowly, a few of them entered the theater, followed by others. The audience inside watched in disbelief as seats were made for those who only moments ago had been shouting in anger. And for the first time, the room was not divided. It was one. Keanu walked back to the stage, now with the protesters seated, among the audience. He raised his hand slightly and said, "This is kindness. Not a word, not a theory, but a choice we make even when it is not easy." The applause that followed was not loud or chaotic. It was gentle, rising slowly like a wave, carrying with it respect and quiet admiration. The room was still echoing with the soft applause when Keanu raised his hand to calm the people. He stood quietly, letting the clapping fade. The protesters, who had just entered, looked around, unsure whether they belonged or not. Some crossed their arms, still holding on to anger, while others shifted uncomfortably, moved by the unexpected kindness they had received. It is easy to stay kind when the world is smiling at you, Keanu began again. His voice was steady, but softer than before. But the true test of kindness is when someone is against you, when someone shouts, when someone mocks, when someone doubts your worth. The choice we make in those moments reveals who we are. The audience leaned in, curious where he was leading this. His words did not sound like a lecture. They felt like a confession. "I want to tell you a story," he continued. "Years ago, I was on a film set. The schedule was tight, everyone was stressed. One day, a crew member, frustrated and exhausted, shouted at me, in front of everyone. His words were sharp, almost humiliating. I could have shouted back. I could have reminded him of who I was, that I was the star, that he had no right to speak to me like that. But instead, I took a deep breath. I looked at him, and I saw not disrespect, but pain. He was tired. He was carrying burdens I could not see. So I chose silence. I chose to listen. Later that night, he came to me quietly with tears in his eyes and said, "Thank you. You could have destroyed me with one word, but you didn't." That night, I understood something. Kindness is not weakness. Kindness is strength. The room was quiet again, but it was not an empty silence. It was a silence filled with respect. Yet, as Keanu paused, a sudden sound broke the calm. One of the protesters stood up, his face hard with defiance. "Words are nice," he said loudly, "but words don't change the world. People in power still crush us. Kindness doesn't pay our bills. Kindness doesn't end injustice." The tension returned instantly. The audience shifted in their seats. Some looked annoyed at the interruption, others curious to see how Keanu would handle it. Keanu nodded slowly, his expression calm. "You are right," he said, surprising everyone again. "Kindness does not erase injustice overnight. Kindness does not pay rent. But let me ask you this. When the world has already given us anger, hate, and cruelty, what do we gain by adding more of it? Hate creates hate. But kindness plants a seed. It may grow slowly, but it grows." He stepped closer to the young man. His eyes, soft but unshakable, met his. "I cannot promise you a perfect world. I cannot solve all pain, but I can choose to face you with respect, even when you challenge me. And maybe that respect will open one door, and maybe, one day, you will open another door for someone else. That is how change begins. Not with explosions of hate, but with quiet chains of kindness." The young man did not reply. His jaw was tense, but his eyes flickered with something unspoken. He sat back down slowly, as if unsure whether to stay, angry, or to reflect. Keanu then turned back to the audience. "When I lost my best friend River Phoenix, I was broken. I thought the world had no meaning. I wanted to hide forever. But a stranger, someone I never knew, held my hand at a cafe when they saw me crying. They said nothing, just held my hand. That act of kindness, small as it was, reminded me that I was not invisible, that I was still human. I cannot tell you how powerful that moment was. It helped me stand again." The audience stirred, many with tears in their eyes. People were not only listening now, they were feeling every word, every memory. Just as the emotions were rising, the theater doors opened once more. A man in a suit entered hurriedly. He was part of the organizing team. He whispered something to one of the staff members who froze with shock. Whispers spread quickly in the back rows, and soon everyone was buzzing. The staff member rushed to the stage, whispering in Keanu's ear. The audience watched, confused. Keanu's face shifted, calm at first, then solemn. He looked out at the people again. "I just received news," he said slowly. "Outside, not far from here, there has been an accident, a car crash. Some of the victims are being taken to the hospital nearby. They need blood donors urgently." The room gasped. The shift from storytelling to real-life crisis was sudden and heavy. People began murmuring, looking at each other, unsure what to do. Keanu did not wait. He stepped forward, his voice firm. "This is the moment I have been speaking about. Kindness is not only words, it is action. I am going to that hospital now to donate blood. If anyone wishes to join me, please come. Tonight, let us not only talk about kindness. Let us live it." The crowd erupted in murmurs again, this time filled with urgency. The protesters looked at each other, caught off guard. Some of the audience members stood almost immediately, driven by instinct. And as Keanu walked off the stage toward the exit, dozens began to follow him. For the first time, his message was no longer a speech. It was a call to action, and the entire theater was about to become a part of it. The night air outside the theater was cool, but the atmosphere was charged with urgency. Keanu walked quickly, his steps steady, his face calm yet determined. Behind him, dozens of people followed. Some were audience members who had come expecting a quiet evening of stories. Others were protesters who had walked in with anger in their eyes only an hour before. Now they were all walking together, united by a sudden call for help. The hospital was only a few blocks away. Flashing red lights glowed in the distance, and the sound of sirens cut through the air. As they approached, the sight was overwhelming. Outside the emergency ward, families were crying. Doctors and nurses rushed back and forth, and volunteers tried to calm the chaos. Without hesitation, Keanu moved to the reception desk. "I want to donate blood," he said simply. The nurse looked up, stunned for a moment. She recognized him immediately, but his tone left no room for celebrity treatment. He was just another human being offering help. "Please come this way," she said, leading him to a small waiting area. Some of the audience members lined up behind him. A few of the protesters looked hesitant, shifting uneasily, but then one young woman stepped forward. "I'll donate too," she said firmly. Soon, more followed until the line stretched long. Inside the donation room, Keanu sat calmly in the chair. As the nurse prepared the needle, he smiled gently. "Thank you for letting me do this," he said. The nurse, holding back tears, whispered, "Thank you for reminding people to care." As the blood flowed into the bag, Keanu closed his eyes for a moment. Images of his past filled his mind. The people he had lost, the pain he had carried. He knew he could not save everyone, but in this small act he felt connected to something larger than himself. Meanwhile, in the waiting area, tension was building. One of the protesters whispered angrily, "Why are we doing this? This doesn't change the world. This doesn't fix anything." Another protester, the same young man who had challenged Keanu earlier, turned to him and said quietly, "Maybe it doesn't fix everything, but look around. People are giving because of one man's choice. Maybe that's a start." The angry protester fell silent, his eyes softening as he watched families hugging the volunteers who were stepping forward to donate. After his donation, Keanu walked back into the crowded waiting hall. A father rushed toward him, his face pale and trembling. "My daughter. She needs blood. You just gave. You might have saved her." The man's voice broke and he bowed his head deeply. Keanu placed his hand gently on the man's shoulder. "I only did what anyone should do. Your daughter is strong. She will fight. Be with her. She needs your strength." The father wept, holding Keanu's hand tightly before rushing back to the ward. The room grew quiet again. People were no longer just staring at a movie star. They were staring at a man whose actions carried the same weight as his words. But then, another twist came. A nurse approached quickly, her face serious. "We need volunteers to comfort some of the families waiting outside. Many are panicking. Some don't know if their loved ones are alive. They need someone to sit with them, to listen, to keep them from falling apart." Before anyone else could move, Keanu nodded. "I'll go." He walked outside to the waiting benches, where several families were sitting in despair. He sat beside an elderly woman who was trembling, whispering prayers under her breath. "May I sit here?" he asked gently. The woman looked at him with tired eyes and nodded. He didn't try to speak big words. He didn't try to promise miracles. Instead, he held her hand, silent but present. The woman slowly leaned against him, her breathing calming. Nearby, a young boy sat alone, his face pale, eyes wide with fear. Keanu walked over, crouched down, and asked softly, "Are you waiting for someone?" The boy nodded. "My brother. They said he might not make it." Keanu's eyes softened. He placed his hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "Your brother is fighting hard, and while he fights, you must fight too. Not with fists, not with anger, but with hope. Can you do that?" The boy nodded again, his lips trembling. For the first time, a small spark returned to his eyes. The scene touched everyone, watching. Audience members, protesters, even hospital staff. They all felt something change in the air. It was no longer about speeches or arguments. It was about human connection. Just then, one of the protesters, the same young woman who had chosen to donate, whispered to another, "This is what kindness looks like. Not words on a stage, not a speech, but sitting here with strangers, carrying their pain with them." And slowly, other volunteers from the theater began to spread out among the waiting families, sitting with them, listening, holding hands. The once noisy, panicked atmosphere softened into something fragile but hopeful. As the night stretched on, Keanu remained there, refusing to leave until the chaos had calmed. And for everyone who had followed him, it became clear. Kindness was not only about giving, it was about staying. The hospital grew quieter as the hours passed, but the weight of fear still hung in the air. Families clung to hope, whispering prayers, waiting for doctors to bring them news. Keanu remained seated among them, never moving far, always ready with a steady smile or a gentle touch. But then a doctor stepped out of the emergency room, his face grave. He scanned the crowd until his eyes landed on the young boy Keanu had comforted earlier. The doctor walked toward him, crouched down, and spoke softly. "Your brother is stable, but he is in critical condition. We need more time." The boy froze, tears filling his eyes. Keanu knelt beside him, his voice calm and strong. "He is still fighting. That means hope is alive, and as long as there is hope, you must not give up." The boy clung to Keanu tightly, whispering, "Thank you for staying with me." Keanu's eyes softened, but inside he felt the heavy truth. Sometimes even kindness cannot change fate. As he stood, another family approached. They had just been told their loved one didn't survive. The mother collapsed in grief, her cries echoing through the hall. People turned away, unable to watch, but Keanu walked straight to her, kneeling on the cold hospital floor. He did not speak. He simply embraced her as she cried into his shoulder. Many were shocked. Here was a world-famous actor sitting on the ground in a hospital hallway holding a grieving mother like she was his own family. But that moment was pure truth. Kindness knows no stage, no spotlight. It lives in the places where pain is deepest. Just then, a group of media reporters appeared at the entrance. Somehow, news of Keanu's presence had spread. Cameras flashed, voices shouted his name, and microphones pushed forward. The fragile silence of the hospital began to shatter. Security rushed to block them, but Keanu raised his hand. "Let them through," he said softly. He walked toward the reporters who expected him to give a statement, maybe pose for the cameras. Instead, he said, "If you want to take pictures, take them of the nurses, of the families, of the people who are truly fighting tonight. They are the real heroes. I am just a man trying to help." The reporters were stunned. Some lowered their cameras. Others tried to ask questions, but Keanu turned back to the families. The cameras followed, capturing him once again sitting on the floor, comforting strangers, reminding the world that kindness was not about image, but action. Meanwhile, one of the protesters who had followed Keanu into the hospital grew restless. His name was Mark. He had come out of anger, wanting to challenge everything Keanu said. But now, after watching him for hours, something inside him cracked. He whispered to the young woman who had donated earlier, "I don't get it. Why does he do this? He doesn't owe them anything. He could leave, and no one would blame him." The woman replied quietly, "Maybe that's the point. Kindness isn't about owing, it's about choosing." Mark fell silent. For the first time, he felt shame for the anger he had carried. But the night was not over. Suddenly, the same doctor returned, his voice urgent. "We need one more donor for a rare blood type. It is critical. If we don't find someone now, a patient may not make it through the night." A hush fell over the room. People looked around nervously. Who would step forward? Keanu stood immediately. "Test me," he said without hesitation. The doctor nodded and rushed him inside. The audience and protesters waited anxiously. Minutes passed like hours. Then the doctor returned with a look of surprise. "He is a match," he announced. "We are preparing for an immediate transfusion." Relief washed through the crowd, but also awe. Keanu was not just speaking about kindness anymore. He was giving his own blood again, directly to save a life in that very moment. As the transfusion began, Keanu smiled faintly at the patient lying beside him, a young woman who had been pulled from the wreck. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale. He whispered, "You are not alone. Keep fighting." For everyone who saw it, the message was louder than any speech he could give. The transfusion lasted through the night. The young woman on the bed, fragile and pale, breathed with effort. Machines beeped steadily, reminding everyone of how delicate life could be. Keanu remained still, his arm outstretched, eyes calm. He never once asked how long it would take. He never once looked away. When it was over, the nurse whispered, "You saved her life tonight." Keanu nodded humbly. "No, we saved her. Every person who worked here, every donor who came, every stranger who cared, it was all of us." The nurse's eyes filled with tears. "Most people come here demanding attention because of who they are. You came asking how to give." Keanu smiled softly, but before he could reply, the young woman on the bed stirred. Her eyes opened slowly. Weakly, she looked around. Then her gaze fell on Keanu. She whispered, Why did you help me?" He leaned closer, speaking gently. "Because you are human. Because your life matters. No one should need a reason to be kind." Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to lift her hand, and Keanu held it gently. "Rest now," he said. "Your strength will return." Outside the room, the audience members and protesters who had followed him waited anxiously. When Keanu stepped out, pale from fatigue but smiling faintly, they rushed to him. One protester asked, "Why would you give so much of yourself to someone you don't even know?" Keanu's answer was simple. "Because once strangers gave to me. I am only passing it forward." His words struck deeply. The young man named Mark, who had resisted all night, finally broke down. He whispered, almost to himself, "I came here to fight him, but he fought me with kindness, and I lost." The young woman beside him touched his arm. "No, Mark. You didn't lose. You found something you forgot, how to care." But the night still carried one more twist. As dawn began to break, the reporters who had gathered outside broadcasted the entire story. The world woke up to images of Keanu sitting, with grieving families, holding hands with children, and giving his blood to save a stranger. Social media exploded with posts, videos, and comments. Some praised him, calling him a hero. Others criticized, saying it was just a show, another celebrity stunt. When Keanu learned about this, he shook his head gently. "People will always talk," he said quietly to the crowd around him. "But kindness is not about proving anyone wrong. It is about doing what is right, even when no one believes you." At that moment, the father whose daughter had received Keanu's earlier donation approached again, tears streaming down his face. "She made it," he whispered, his voice shaking. "My daughter is alive because of you." The man fell to his knees in gratitude, but Keanu quickly helped him stand. "Please do not thank me," Keanu said. "Thank the nurses, the doctors, the strangers who donated. Kindness is never about one person. It is about all of us, together." The father embraced him tightly, whispering, "You gave me back my world." The room filled with tears and quiet sobs. Even the protesters, once filled with anger, now felt something break open inside them. One by one, they approached the families, offering help, offering comfort. Keanu watched silently. This was what he had hoped for. Not attention, not recognition, but a spark spreading from one act to many. But as he stood there, exhausted, another nurse hurried over. "There is still one more patient," she said urgently. "A young boy. His condition is unstable. He may not make it through the morning. His family is breaking apart." Keanu closed his eyes briefly, gathering strength. "Take me to him," he said, and once again, without hesitation, he walked toward another soul in need. The nurse led Keanu through the long hallway, past rooms filled with tired families and weary doctors. At the end of the corridor, a small room held a boy no older than 10. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. His mother sat beside him, clutching his hand tightly, whispering prayers through her tears. His father stood by the window, staring out, broken by helplessness. As Keanu entered quietly, the mother looked up. For a moment she froze, recognizing him. But then she shook her head. "He's slipping away," she whispered. "No one can help him now." Keanu knelt beside the boy, gently placing his hand over the child's. "May I sit with him?" he asked softly. The mother nodded through her sobs. He leaned closer, speaking gently into the boy's ear. "You are stronger than you know. I don't know your story, but I know you are loved, and love is the greatest strength anyone can have." The boy stirred faintly. His lips parted, and in a weak voice he whispered, "I'm scared." Keanu's eyes glistened. "It's okay to be scared," he said, "but don't be scared alone. I am here. Your mother is here. Your father is here. You are not alone." The boy's eyes fluttered open for a brief moment. They locked onto Keanu's, and something in them softened. A faint smile appeared. The doctors rushed in to check the monitors. The boy's condition was still fragile, but for the first time, his breathing steadied. The mother gasped, clutching her son's hand. The father turned from the window, tears filling his eyes. "What did you say to him?" the father whispered. Keanu looked at the boy, then at the parents. "I reminded him of what he already has. Your love. Sometimes love is enough to keep fighting." The family embraced each other, their hope renewed. Outside the room, the crowd of volunteers, protesters, and audience members waited. When Keanu stepped out, exhausted but calm, they surrounded him. Mark, the young protester who had once shouted against him, stepped forward. His eyes were wet, his voice trembling. "I thought kindness was useless. I thought it was weakness. But tonight, I saw it save lives. I saw it heal hearts. I saw it change me." Keanu placed his hand gently on Mark's shoulder. "Kindness doesn't always fix the world," he said softly. "But it always makes the world better than it was before. Even if it is just for one person, even if it is just for one moment. That is enough." The crowd stood in silence, absorbing the weight of his words. As dawn fully broke, the hospital was calmer. The chaos of the night had given way to fragile hope. Families held their loved ones, volunteers sat with strangers, and, for once, anger was replaced by quiet unity. Keanu walked outside, the morning sun rising behind him. Reporters waited, eager to capture one final statement. He looked at them, then at the crowd of people who had followed him from the theater to the hospital. "Kindness," he said slowly, "is not about being perfect. It is about showing up. It is about giving what you can, even when it feels small. One act of kindness will not change the whole world, but it can change someone's world. And that is enough." The crowd erupted in applause. Not the loud, shallow applause of entertainment, but the deep, heartfelt applause of souls touched by truth. Mark stepped forward once more, raising his voice. "Tonight, you didn't just give us a message. You gave us a lesson. I will not forget it. None of us will." Keanu bowed his head humbly, then walked quietly into the morning light. There were no banners, no awards, no stage, just a man who had lived his words, leaving behind a night where strangers became family and kindness proved stronger than hate.